Hello and welcome to this next Flip preaching video. My name's Andy. We're going to look at the passage for Sunday in advance so we can get our heads around it beforehand. Have you got the sheet? You don't need this, but it's useful because it's got the passage for today and some other ones which I think are interesting to look at in conjunction with it, and you can highlight and pick out bits on it. So today's passage is Matthew 9:35, and we're going to blend into Matthew 10 up to 10 verse 8. Last week we looked at the Great Commission, where Jesus told his disciples to go and make disciples of all nations. And here we've got a kind of precursor to that. It's where Jesus first sends his 12 disciples, or apostles as they're called here uniquely, out when he commissions them. So we're going to have a look at this. So it starts off, verse 35 is a little summary of what's gone before. So it talks about Jesus going around everywhere, teaching, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, curing every disease and every sickness. And this is very much like a similar thing that happened in chapter 4. It's almost word for word the same. So these two bits kind of bookmark a whole chunk of Matthew's gospel. So in between that bit and this bit, we have the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus gives his big lot of teaching, and we talked about that a lot last week. And then there's a section where he goes out and acts and cures people and heals and restores. So there are these two counterparts to Jesus's work. It's his teaching and his actions. So today we're going to focus more on the actions. I was really struck looking at this at the words which he used are quite universal, all-encompassing. Things like Jesus went in all the cities. He proclaimed the good news of the kingdom. He cured every disease and every sickness. The harvest is plentiful. He saw a crowd. This is a big group of people. It's all about everybody being included, and I think that's really, really cool. Jesus doesn't do things by halves. God doesn't do things by halves. God's restoration is going to be for all. And there's a real sense that Jesus was restoring. He says that he saw the crowds harassed and helpless, like a sheep without a shepherd. And when God sees that, he doesn't leave that be. When things are broken, God restores it. It says that he had compassion for the crowds. He was moved in his guts, would be a more literal translation of the original words that Matthew used. Jesus restores what's broken. Whatever it is, whatever disease, whatever's separating people from wholeness, whatever sickness is holding them back, Jesus acts and brings restoration. And then the great news is, the scary but wonderful news is that Jesus says that the harvest is plentiful, but the labourers are few. And then it talks about the disciples. It's as if the work of restoration is very kind of granular. It works on a bit by bit basis. It needs lots of people to get involved and stuck in, and that's our job. As disciples, as followers, we're the people who go and do this work of restoration, help with this work of restoration. It says that Jesus gave them authority over the unclean spirits. This is in 10 verse 1. So the authority that Jesus has was given to people to do the same thing. And he commissioned them to do the same things again. He said, go cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out demons. All these different ways in which people are broken, the disciples were challenged and tasked and equipped and empowered to go out on a one-to-one basis and do what they could. The other passages on the sheet are just examples from either Matthew or Luke of these four things in action. So there are four things: curing the sick, raising the dead, cleansing the lepers, casting out demons. And let's have a look at those one by one. So Luke 13, the chapter here, is just one of the healing stories. Could have picked any one really. But if you notice, it's not just a straightforward, this woman was poorly, Jesus made her better. There's a sense that this woman has been trapped. It says that Satan has bound this woman for 18 long years, and Jesus liberates her from that. So often in the Gospels, healing is connected with forgiveness, with guilt, with something that traps people, and Jesus is the one who releases. So that's part of our job, is to be a forgiving presence, encouraging forgiveness and reconciliation. Okay, the second thing, raise the dead. I've got a bit from Luke 7 here. There's not a lot of raising the dead in the Gospels, but there's the overwhelming sense that the dead will be raised. The word raised up is used again and again and again. So in Luke 7, this is one of the literal raising of the dead. There's a widow, and Jesus happens upon the funeral of her son. And Jesus had compassion. Again, he comes with this deep compassion. And he says to this woman, don't weep. So Jesus comes with compassion and hope, because he knows that the dead will be raised. He knows that death is a temporary thing and that life will be restored. And that's our job too, to be that messenger of compassion and hope. The third category was cleansing the lepers. So I've chosen an example from Matthew 8, which was just before this in Matthew's Gospel. He cleanses a leper, and then straight away Jesus tells him to go to the temple. It seems that part of the issue with leprosy, which the Gospels want to challenge and Jesus wanted to challenge, was the fact that if you were leprous, you were excluded from the religious community. The temple system was where you met God, where you came to God. But if you were leprous, you weren't allowed there. And Jesus cures this person so that he can be back in the crowd. So the healing of the lepers is about including people who were excluded. And again, that's our job. We're to include people who are excluded for whatever reason. And finally, casting out demons. There are different ways of interpreting this, and I wonder what you think it means to cast out demons. Some people take that on a literal level, that there's a force of evil in the world, and our job is to be light in that darkness and to force the evil out. That's spiritual warfare. Another way of looking at it is that systems are demonic. Systems such as racism, which is very much in our minds at the moment, is a demonic system because it degrades one group of people and keeps them trapped. And Jesus says, cast out the demons, send them back where they belong. And in the passage from Matthew 8, I've chosen the example where these people possessed by demons had the demons cast out and they were restored. The demons went back into the sea where they belong, because remember, water is the place of chaos. They didn't belong in these people. They were sent back to where they should be. So all of these things happen when the kingdom of God comes near, when the goodness of God appears. There's no place for sickness or death or exclusion or evil. Jesus came and brought his goodness, his kingdom near, and we are the people who get to continue that work. How amazing is that? So I wonder what you make of this passage. I haven't given a lot of attention today to the 12 disciples. I was kind of struck actually by how little I knew about some of these. I don't think I could remember all 12. Some of them just don't crop up ever again, like Thaddeus. This is the only time he's mentioned. He doesn't seem to do very much in the writings of the church or in the Gospels. Some of them are a bit more of the stars, like Simon or Thomas. But some of them just seemed to just get on with the job and didn't get much credit afterwards. Okay, so there are just a few thoughts about this brilliant summary story of what it means to be a disciple, carrying out, proclaiming Jesus' teaching and doing the things that he did to push back darkness. Okay, thanks for watching. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.